All right, guys, welcome everyone, and thanks for the intro. I'm Max. As we just said there, Finimize is a platform that helps people become smart investors in less than 10 minutes a day. Now, what we did is we built a community first around our newsletter. We've got over 1 million subscribers to our newsletter, and we did that using member-organized events. As of this year, we should have around 60,000 people attend those member-organized events. Then we launched a paid community, and that paid community has tens of thousands of subscribers where you get access to group chats, user-generated content, and of course, premium content and premium events. But I think the thing that we're most proud of is that we've managed to get community embedded in every single one of our team members' minds and every team across the business. And we've managed to align that with our members as well. So the one promise that we all run off is very true, and we all live up to for our business and our members. So I just wanted today to kind of talk through that framework, and hopefully it should help anyone that is in a position of trying to lead their community and get their business on board and everyone moving in the same direction. But I just wanted to start with sort of the why. Like, why have I been thinking about this? And really it's because there's been a problem in the community industry that's happened in the last year or so. That problem is that communities become cool. Should be a great thing, right? Like, there's more community jobs than ever before. There's more resource being thrown at community managers and community teams than ever before. And even VCs think what we're doing is cool. You would think that would be a fantastic thing for all of the community professionals and executives and managers out there. But really what it is given a bit of an identity, because what really we're doing now is asking a group of professionals who have had to spend their whole careers fighting for the budget and fighting to their existence is worthy, now go out and lead the entire business. And what I hope, and I believe it's so important that community managers are empowered and there's more businesses take on community. What I hope is that in this position, that you don't go in asking for permission and looking for validation from other people in the company. What I do is take this framework and run with it and put the community right at the heart of your business. So the tool that I use to do this is a community promise. A community promise is a unique commitment to your members that matters to them and differentiates you from everybody else. Really all it is a phrase, an articulation of the guaranteed experience that your members can expect every single time, and the guaranteed experience that your members are willing to contribute to every single time. There's 3 parts to it. So if you're thinking about doing this for your business, and this takes a while, but if you're thinking about doing this for your business, you get to have a really deep understanding of your member and their needs. Now, I'm using the word ideal because what I don't want people to do and what doesn't work is try and build multiple personas and how your community can solve small parts for each different persona. What you're really trying to do is attract the perfect member. Now, the perfect member for you and your community, and also the member who gets the most value out of being part of your community. That's what you want to focus on and understand that very deeply. The second part is you want to understand your community. Like, what is the value? What is the unique value that you get? Now, where you don't want to put your focus is on where other communities meet those needs of your perfect members. There's no point trying to compete where you're both strong, both delivering value. There's no point trying to compete where other communities can over-deliver on those needs. There's also no point trying to compete where you're just launching products because other communities in that space are doing it too, rather than focusing on your members' needs. Where it becomes very powerful, and probably the hardest part of this, is once you land on your promise, and I'll spend the rest of this talk going through how to get there, but once you land on it, you then work to embed this across every single touch point. And if you do this and you do it well, and you go above and beyond on that promise, you'll start to shape the perception of your brand and community in the mind of your current and potential members. This means you'll attract and retain the right members. This is the secret of retention. Retention is easy when the people that you're onboarding into your community are the perfect members, the right members. And also, as new people come into the community, they're being welcomed by people just like them, having exactly the same needs solved in exactly the same way, and it compounds over time. And that is how you can scale with a really high quality community. But it means that this promise is lived up to across your sales decks, across your content team, on your website, your adverts, the packaging if it's a physical product, how your customer success team will talk to your customers. That promise should run through every single part of the business. And if you get it right, some powerful things start happening. Now, just to bring this to life a bit and really hammer this point home, right? You can't build a community if you try and satisfy too many people. And if you're starting or you're building a new strategy, you need that laser focus. Now, as an example that I love, that I think brings this to life a little bit, it's a brand, it's not a community. It's San Pellegrino. San Pellegrino, the sparkling water brand, have done something very impressive. They've managed to convince the world there's such a thing and a need for luxury sparkling water. Now, let's not deny there's a whole group of people that would never pay $2, $3, $4 for a single bottle of sparkling water. In fact, what they want is just water. They want it to be low cost, convenient, simple to access, and there's brands out there that do that. But there is, and I'm one of these people, a world of people who want high quality and luxury water. But just think about that San Pellegrino experience from start to finish. And think about the luxurious, thick glass bottle that you get in your sparkling water. Think about the branding. And they've even just recently launched an innovation center where they push the frontier of innovation in water technology. Like, this is going above and beyond just to live up to their promise and just to occupy that moment when any member or customer is trying to make a decision that you're top of mind. So just a reminder, that's all we're trying to do is these 3 circles. Who is your ideal member? What do they get from your community that they cannot get from any other community? Another brand example is your package will get their overnight guarantee. This is from FedEx. It does what it says on the tin, and that's why it is so great. It's simple, it's believable, it's memorable, and you can measure it. Now, those last are really important because you have to be able to measure what you're setting your community promise as. You have to be able to point your members and your team to a specific measure and metric that we can say, are we on track? Are we off track? And then finally, it's important that it's memorable because the same with anyone that's putting together community guidelines, community rules, community values, they have to be so simple to recall. So it's top of mind whenever any new member gets introduced. Whenever we're ever discussing, new product launches, ways that we're going to moderate our community, our promise will sit in the top of our minds. Now, the way you go about building this community promise is normally that you collect these unique attributes, and your promise will sit in the middle. That one phrase, that articulation of what you guarantee the experience will be like. So to build up these attributes and to land on that final distillation of the essence of your community, there's 3 questions that you just need to answer. Now, don't underestimate this. This took us 3 months to complete. And it takes that long because you need to have full buy-in and full input from your teams. You need to have exactly the same team members via surveys, one-to-ones, workshops. But all you're trying to achieve is get everyone on the same page of who is this ideal member. If you're a product, this works, who is your ideal customer? But think of this as a community promise, who's our ideal member? Understand the difference between what they're getting out of your community that your not ideal member isn't getting. What is it they're trying to achieve? What are their demographics? And then you try and find where they overlap, and you'll find the real common threads start coming up. So go deep on each of these phases and get that qualitative understanding. When it comes to why they love your community, what you're really trying to understand is, look, what is the functional benefits they get, but what is the emotional benefits? Let me put Finimize as an example here. We found out in this process that a lot of our members felt calm when they joined the Finimize community, which is actually interesting when you think of our unique position, right? There's so much financial information out there that is overwhelming and noisy and full of complexity. There's also a lot of information out there that is bite-sized and digestible and relaxed. However, the quality isn't quite there. And anyone that's tried to learn to invest via using TikTok will know what I'm talking about. But here I'm just sort of showing you some examples of where you start to land in the unique space that your community can operate in. And then also think of other areas where perhaps you're not so, and eliminate spending time on the areas where you're not strong and not delivering those unique values, and double down on those areas where you offer unique value to your ideal member. So I've included some questions here. If anyone wants slides, wants to follow up with me afterwards on how you really go about implementing and working through those workshops, just DM me on it. I'm happy to talk through this and help anyone. But if you go through this process, you end up with something like this. You'll have a few attributes of what your ideal members' needs are. You have some attributes about what makes your community special just for them. And you have some attributes of your competitors. And that will give you a bit of a foundation of, okay, this is where we play. Now, I've included some examples from Finimize, but just to bring that to life, we found out our members are time poor. They're not beginners when it comes to investing, but they're certainly not experts either. And they're all going to become smarter. They use Finimize around their morning habit. Now, when they go to satisfy those needs elsewhere, the reason that we are delivering unique value is because we offer them their bite-sized information, but we have really high quality. You know, we make sure everything we do is educational. We keep everything accessible and conversational. That's very hard for them to get. But also, there are other communities out there that do things better than we do. You know, if you're looking for breaking news and you want to day trade, or you want to become a professional investor, or you want to pass a certain exam, or really what you're looking for is a real deep dive analysis on niche sectors, we're not the community for you, and we're never going to be. And there's other places that you can go to get that. But just don't focus too much on Finimize, but focus on what is that for your community? What is that essence? Where is that tick? You meet those needs, and then how can you elevate? Because in that is where you'll find your community promise. Again, this takes time refining, and that process of working with your team to refine will be one of the most powerful parts of this, because you bring everyone on the same page. You might find that your growth team thinks your core member and your core customer is very different to what your content team does, your product team or your sales team, and that can cause real problems. But as soon as you get everyone on the same page and you get your members on the same page, you can then look at, okay, well, how do we interact? Well, for us, we make sure everything we do is intelligent and digestible, quality and bite-sized. Why? Because we know that fits our ideal member. We also know that we cater to casual investors, not professionals, but not complete beginners too. And the whole goal is to turn those into smarter investors. So everyone that joins our community signs up to this promise. Everyone that is in here internally signs up to this promise. And what it starts to do, and you'll find this internally, this is sort of the final phase of the whole process, is you start to have some really interesting and important conversations. So I sit down with every team and we run through where are we and where are we not living up to this promise. You know, it started having conversations about, okay, well, how are we ensuring that everything right is intelligent? Well, now we will only hire analysts from the top investment banks. There's a lot of media companies that are hiring journalists, perhaps out of university, perhaps they're interested in the space, but you know, we're making sure, which is, you know, a sacrifice to our business, we're making sure that we'll only hire people from the highest quality investment banks that were paid to do this for professional investors. Why? Because that came up time and time again. That is why our members come to us. And then again, we know that our members come to us because we're bite-sized, we're digestible. So how do we measure that, and how do we hold ourselves accountable? Well, there will never be a piece that you can find in Finimize that's longer than 50 to consume start to finish. You know, now we're starting to set measures, but you can do this too. And we start to set measures that we can live up to. We can also apply that to our community. So you take this to each team, and an example here of a conversation that we had internally with just the community team starts to drive some really interesting positions. So for example, with our metrics and reporting, it's like, okay, how are we getting up to that? Making sure that our customers are getting smarter. Now, every piece of content has an insightfulness score. We measure on a quarterly basis whether our members feel like they're getting smarter, and if they're not, and we're not hitting the standard that we've set up for ourselves, we go and fix that, not just in the community team, but across the entire business. For our moderation policy, it has to be bite-sized, it has to be quality. So that means that we start introducing training and educational posts in our group chats to make people post, they're giving insight. you will never find a insert stock is going to the moon in a Finimize community chat. We work so hard to make sure that if you do mention a single company, give your reason why you're interested. Give something where people can take insight and respond to. So it's just really small examples where they drive the decision around what our platforms are, what values are, what's the rules like, what are our onboarding like, what's our engagement strategy going to be. And if you do that with every single team, you'll end up with a long list of work to be done in the short term that is going to make a real difference to your existing customers and members. It's going to make a real difference to who you attract in future. Now, it has to be difficult for the business. You have to make some real changes, because just surface level promises don't mean anything to anyone. So I just want to finish on that, and just to think, like, don't make promises you don't intend to keep. A promise is a powerful word, and if you make a promise, you have to live up to that every single time you have that experience. You have to make hard decisions, you have to make drastic changes in your business, and everyone needs to buy into it. But this will give you a framework to start doing that, and it means that your company is aligned around community. And finally, you have a business that actually has at its heart. So that's me done. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope that helped. Let's see if there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Max. That was fantastic, really enlightening, and many of the things actually resonated with the audience, and I see a lot of engagement going on. And yes, that was a deep presentation. I agree with Alexandra. Really, really cool. Only a certain level of understanding, a certain deep level of understanding of community would, bring these up as a as a session to be delivered to us. So wonderful. Thank you very much. So let's look at the questions. We have some good time, and hopefully we'll answer a good chunk of them. So let's see. The most upvoted ones are from Julie and Douglas. So Julie is asking, would you modify the process of building a community promise for a new or emerging community, or is it more of a trial and error until you can accurately define those attributes?
Yeah, great question. So I personally think you can do this at any stage. I guess if you're building a brand new community from scratch, you still will need a first group of members. You can do this with them. It's just a shorter process, and it means that you have a very small team to work with. So 100% you can do this. It just means it's a shorter process. And also you can totally refine as you go on. And it is something that you should keep testing yourselves and living up to, because if it's not changing your company metrics, if this isn't improving your retention rate, or this isn't improving the quality of customers and members that you're acquiring, then you've got the problem. So for example, for us, we now know that when you join a Finimize group and when you engage in the community as a paid subscriber, you're twice as likely to renew your annual subscription. Now that means that our retention rate is impacted by community just from following this framework. And for a subscription business, retention is like the most important metric you want to worry about. So 100%.
Fantastic. Thank you for that answer. So Douglas, at the same time, is asking a question: what kind of promises? That's a very broad statement. So what do you think?
Well, I guess that's the challenge, right? There's one promise. You have one promise statement. What's probably useful is if you head to Google, type in great examples of brand promises, because this is a repurpose of my branding background, repurpose of a brand promise statement. Go look at really good examples of those. Nike are fantastic with this, but also look at some of the non-sexy businesses. It's a statement that you can all live up to, and you can't have multiple promises. It's one. So that's it. That's all you need. You need everyone to get on the same page. But I would definitely go and check out some other great.
Fantastic. So Annie's asking, do you find that your members ask you to expand to other areas outside of your community promise or your internal teams? How do you have those conversations?
Yeah, all the time. That's the hardest part. Right? That's the hardest part. And I find community managers really struggle because we're kind of wired to help everybody and we want to make everyone happy. But that's kind of the hardest part. So, if you're strict with this, if it's outside of your community promise, it's in an area where you can't deliver much value, then really you're just wasting your time, because you're going to launch something that is not very good compared to the competition out there for someone that is not a core member. So you have to be strict for yourself. And it helps you really, really focus.
Cool. So Erin's asking, how do you recommend going about getting cross-functional to buy into to develop a community promise at a company that is not community first, or testing the waters with community as an arm of the business?
Yeah. So really the secret of this is it's not the promise that does the work. What does the work is bringing everyone together and thinking through. So those workshops are where you get the buy-in, because it's come from the teams themselves. It's come from the members themselves. You know, we define this together, and we promise that we're gonna upkeep this. This is our core audience. This is what we do, and this is what we do better than anyone else. So really, it's about getting that interest in getting people to attend, getting people to join in, getting people to engage. But you have to relate it back to business metrics. And I guarantee you there isn't a business out there that couldn't benefit from refining their focus.
Cool. So we've got a couple more questions, and we do have the time to answer them, which is great. So Tim's asking, how can you establish a community promise if you're just starting to build a community?
Yeah, look, I think it's the same as my original answer to this is you can start a community with 10 members, and it's you and those 10 members, and you can figure it out. You could start, say you're a big blue chip company that has never had a community strategy before. This also works there. So this works. Really all you're trying to do is understand who are we building this community for. If you've got no one to work with, start hypothetically. Build it for yourself. Who is the ideal member that you're working for? How are you solving that? And if you have a problem solved, where else could you go to solve that problem?
Right, cool. So one final question that we haven't answered from what I can see is from Divya Kopolu. What kind of promises do you make to the internal business / stakeholders to get their buy-in?
What kind of promises? Well, I think this is where it's important to push people to think about metrics. As a company, what you're trying to do is build a successful business. As a community, what you're trying to achieve is make sure the outcomes for your members are what they're looking for. That's why on one of my slides, it's all about, what is the transformation that your members are going to get when they join the community? And once you start focusing on this, it's a promise that you're making to each other, because essentially you're either going to drive revenue forwards, you're going to drive acquisition forwards, perhaps you drive retention, perhaps you drive NPS, perhaps all of these things. But this shouldn't be a branding exercise or a community exercise. This is a company-wide exercise where we say we're going to focus on over-delivering for our most important members, nothing else.
Right, let's see if we can actually squeeze in just one last question who's just arrived from Kim Reckes. I just started a new community. I got 40 members in my group. How would you ask them about the brand promise? How do you engage them and bring them together on this topic?
Yeah, great question. So what I would do is I would ask those 3 questions, and I would get them to work through it together. You want to know, okay, who are we building this community for? Let's get really detailed understanding. Perhaps that's demographic information. Perhaps it's people that don't have much time. Perhaps it's people that want to improve in a certain skill. Really define that, and define that with all 40 members. Include some easy surveys. Include some one-to-one interviews. You probably can speak to most of these people. Include some focus groups and get everyone on the same page. And answer the second question. What is it about this community that we can deliver that you can't get anywhere else? Ask the third question. What other communities are out there that we love? And once you have that, you'll start to build a picture really, really quickly. Okay, look, this is where we're delivering value. And I can guarantee you, if you're one of our ideal members, if you're the person that is looking for luxury sparkling water, I guarantee you this is going to be the best option out there. And that's where you start to build conviction for members. And that's where you start to give yourself a bit of a roadmap of what you're going to achieve.
Fantastic. Those are some great answers, and we managed to squeeze in a lot of good questions. So thanks for asking and thanks for answering, Max. It's been one great session for us, very knowledgeable on the subject, and thank you very much. Thanks to everybody for listening. So that brings us to the end of our session with Max.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.